hot take for all of you. And that is that Meghan is correct, actually. Let's get into it, shall we? Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. A few months ago, I made a video about my first 4 years living in the UK, some comparisons between America and the UK, and elaborated a little bit as to why I will not be moving back to the US. As you can see presently on my channel, comments are turned off. That is because a bunch of old dudes found that video, which is always fun. It has 15K views and they are almost all from old men. But also, the bigots came out in full force. We got all of the classic entries. What are you doing here? When are you going home? Go back to your home country. You don't belong here. And also, traitor, I guess? Although I can't tell if this is because I'm not British yet or if I've moved away from America. Please enlighten me. I really want to know where I've crossed the line. Oh man, this is gonna be a long one. Right, so Meghan. Many of you will be aware of the journey of Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, and her husband, Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. The British tabloids will not let you forget about them, despite the fact that they hate them, I guess. You may also be aware that they have just put out a 6-episode docuseries on Netflix, simply titled Harry and Meghan, in which they chronicle basically the entirety of their relationship and their escape from the monarchy. And yes, I think the word escape here is appropriate, especially the last 2 episodes of the show. My goodness. I'm not here to get into the royalty of it all. I have lots of thoughts, but that is not the main subject we are here to talk about today. Instead, I want to talk about the experience of the American immigrant to the UK. And yes, I do call myself an immigrant. Judge me. Some of you may think that my coverage here is a bit biased because I am American, Meghan is also America, they moved to America. I'm not going to deny that there is a little bit of kinship, we'll say, because, oh man, there are more American immigrants over here than I think most Brits think of. You think of Americans in the UK, you think of the touristy ones, the rude ones, the ones who are assholes. Sorry, Grandma, I know you're gonna come visit me soon. Please forgive me. No, as a matter of fact, there are a lot of American women, at least 5,000 that I know of, that live over here. They don't just live over here with plans to go back to the US. A lot of us come over to this country with the intention of staying here permanently. But most people disagree with us calling ourselves immigrants, even though immigrants move to another country to live there permanently, either by choice or because they can't return home. And expat implies that they're only going to be there for a certain amount of time and then head home, that there's a bit of privilege there. So for the longest time, I was wondering whether to refer to myself as an expat or an immigrant. And if you had talked to me in the first year I moved over here when I was a student and I didn't know if I was going to stay here permanently, I would have called myself an expat. But I've been here 4 years now. I'm married to a Brit. I have a job. I intend to keep living here. I'm an immigrant. And if you tell me that I don't look like an immigrant, then sweetie, I don't think immigration is your issue here. And yes, this documentary does unpack that quite a bit. There is a bit, I think in either episode 2 or 3, but the general vibe, more or less, is that Meghan found the love of her life, and I do believe that they are a deeply, deeply in love couple. I see a lot of parallels in the way that they relate as a couple to the way that me and my husband interact. But basically, she more or less gave up the entirety of the life that she was living in North America. She gave up her job, her family, her lifestyle brand, almost her activism, and she gave it all up to move to another country to be with the love of her life because she knew that she wanted to be with him. Guess who else did that? Yeah, yeah, so I moved to the UK ostensibly to do my master's degree, but also to do that whilst being close to my now partner, who I had been dating long distance at that time for about 2 years. And basically moving to the same country and living together was more or less the last step in figuring out, are we compatible to live together, be together, love together for the rest of our lives? And it worked. And then you had to go up against the very big barriers to being an immigrant over here. First, I want to talk about Meghan's experience a little bit. She mentions that she moved over here and there wasn't really anybody to show her the ropes, either, you know, as a royal or even just as like a person who is moving to Britain and is trying to learn their culture. I think Brits have a very high opinion of their culture. Not that Americans don't. Americans are quite insular, or America as a country anyways, or it intends to be. But Brits, when I moved over here, I mean, in the documentary, Meghan talks about like Googling the lyrics to the British national anthem, and people are somehow outraged that she didn't know it ahead of time. Do you know who also didn't know all of the lyrics to the national anthem before they moved here? Me! Do you know who still doesn't know the words to the verse 2 through 6? Me, and also most other Brits who were born here. That's getting ahead of ourselves. But the point is, people were making fun of her for like Googling and trying to learn about the culture that way, as if she was supposed to come over here with like a ready-formed knowledge of the culture. Do you know what happened when I first came over to the UK all the way back in 2016 when I did that semester abroad? Remember that? The first 3 weeks that the group of like 20 of us or so from my university were all together was before we even left for Britain. We took a 3-week intensive course where we were just getting a crash course in British history, culture, monarchs. You had to learn all the monarchs, food, everything, basically. And there's still stuff that I don't know or even really care about in terms of customs. People will always come up to me if I don't like something. I had an incident the other day where somebody asked me about, oh, have you been catching up on the Jungle? Jungle being I'm a Celeb. And I, 1, do not watch I'm a Celeb, and 2, didn't really get that, like, when said the Jungle, that he meant I'm a Celeb, and I got eviscerated for it. It's a reality show. Oh, but it's a British institution. I'm like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be for everyone, I guess. And this is not a dig at people who like reality TV. I love me some good RuPaul's Drag Race. I definitely used to marathon America's Next Top Model back in the day. I getcha. I love me some Bake Off, okay? We just watched the Taskmaster New Year special. I like reality TV. It's not that I have a problem with. What I do have a problem with is Brits assuming that, like, you don't belong here because you don't ascribe to certain cultural norms. For example, pubs. Pubs are big in this country. I don't drink very much. I don't like to drink very much. I drank a lot when I like first was like 20 living over here, and then when I turned 21 in the States, and then like I had a really bad incident with alcohol. Nothing, you know, too serious, but I have never drank that much again in my entire life, and I don't like the idea that the biggest like social activity of choice is to go out and get sloshed for really expensive drinks. But the point is, Meghan is right. You come over to this country, 9 times out of 10 you don't know anyone. The only people you may know is the partner that you're coming over here to join, or potentially people that you are coming over here to work for and with if you're coming over here on a work visa. You drop everything. I had a whole life back in Michigan and all of my family still lives there. I still have stuff of mine that's in my parents' house that I would love to bring over here, but it's expensive. I moved over here with 2 whole suitcases that had my life in it, that carried my life in it. And yes, between, you know, people coming over to visit me, between going back home a couple of times, you know, I've been able to bring more stuff over, but it's still like, you know, you come over here, you have to start a life from scratch, whether you're a normal person like me or whether you're, you know, marrying into the bloody royal family. It was so refreshing to hear her talk about this because she was just like, it's lonely to come over here and to be in a new culture, to try to learn the ropes, and nobody's there to help you because they just expect you to know. And I'm just screaming at my TV, yes, somebody finally said it. And I mentioned it in one of my Facebook groups where we, American women in the UK talk about it. And this is not an isolated experience. Almost everybody in this chat, there's like 100 comments on this thing. Everybody, people who've been here for a year, less than a year, people who've been here for a decade and 2 decades or anything. They're just like, it's all the same. People expect you to assimilate into their culture and, get rid of whatever previous culture you had, but they don't extend the same grace to us. Or they say really insulting shit about, like, Americans. And America's not a perfect country. There are a lot of things wrong with America, otherwise I would still be living there, okay? I get it. I really get it. But, like, anytime I meet somebody new, I am okay with talking about my culture and the differences between American and British culture. I love, learning about differences and, for example, like learning about how the education system works over in the UK versus in the US, although Rishi Sunak is really trying hard to make sure we learn maths until the age of 18. I'm going off on a tangent. When somebody hears my accent, they ask if I'm from America, I say yes, and they immediately just want to talk about guns and Trump and health insurance and all of these things. I don't think people realize how really traumatizing that is for me. Like, I would never, like, go up to someone whom I don't know. They're also an immigrant. I'm not gonna go up and ask them about the worst aspects of their culture and expect them to answer for it, okay? I'm gonna be frank, I do not want to talk about guns in just casual conversation. I really don't. I don't think they realize how serious of a subject it is. Like, we had to do active shooter drills in my school. Like, Columbine happened when I was 4 years old, and by the time I was, like, in, like, middle school, regular shooter drills were a thing. Like, we'd have to hide, and every so often, like, they wouldn't give us fair warning about it, so we're just sitting there in the dark, and that's not even counting, like, all of the actual school shootings that have happened. Oh, man, wow, this video is really getting off on a tangent. You know what? I'm gonna end this by talking a little bit about the actual obstacles I've had to come over here. Because most people, when they say that I'm married to a Brit, they automatically assume I'm a British citizen from the day I married them. Well, my friends, do I have some news for you. In fact, I'm just gonna take out a couple of things here from under my desk. I just need to make sure I've got the right things. Friends, I present to you a binder full of all of the documentation that I had to gather for my most recent round of spouse visa application. And yes, I say most recent because there is more than one. So I came over here, as I say, on a tier 4 student visa, and that did not permit me to do any work, any job at all that wasn't work placement, which my master's degree did not offer. So basically, as soon as I was accepted, I had to spend the next 6 months working my behind off to save up enough money that would last me for an entire academic year because I couldn't work here. And it worked somehow. And then I wanted to stay, and they were basically just like, go back to your own country and, do your film stuff and whatever. But no, because I've built a life here, I have a spouse here, I'm going to stay. I kid you not. That first spouse visa cost me £2,400, and that does not count the cost of the actual appointment to get your fingerprints taken. And half of that cost is the NHS surcharge. So, like, they are lying on the government website when they say, oh, it only costs like £1,000 to apply for spouse visa in the UK. No, it doesn't. The visa itself costs £1,000. Then you have to pay another £1,000 because the visa is for 2.5 years, and you have to pay the NHS surcharge for that entire period. So it'd be like, oh, the NHS surcharge, it's only £400 a year. Yes, but then you have to pay like 2.5 years of that in advance. So in effect, your visa costs £2,000 plus the fee, plus, the transports to get to wherever you need to go for your in-person appointment, and all of the emotional labor it takes to gather all of the information, because you need bills, you need wage statements, you need utilities, you need proof of address, you need proof of travel. You need every single person that you know. You need to state why there is a reason that you cannot live your life effectively in your previous country. And just all supporting evidence. And do you know what else also did? It's not necessarily required, but you give all these documentation. You have to provide photo evidence that you have been together for X amount of years and traveled long distance, that you've traveled to see each other if you have not already been living in the UK for 2 years. And that's just applying within the UK. So you have to have like, you save everything, you document everything. And you know, the first time that I applied for a spouse visa, which is when I was switching between a tier 4 and the spouse visa, you can apply by the time that your previous visa expires, and you can remain in the UK until you get a decision. If it does take longer than the date that your previous visa expires, that is the most terrifying and anxiety-inducing 2 months of my entire life waiting for that first spouse visa decision. And that includes all of COVID. That 2 months was more anxiety-inducing than all of COVID because I didn't have a job. I didn't know if I could even go to the GP, and it's bloody terrifying, y'all. The relief when I got my BRP card in the mail and the answer saying that yes, you can stay for another 2.5 years was, I cried. I cried so hard. And then, 2.5 years came by, and then I had to pay for the next spouse visa renewal, which was another £2,500. And this one, thankfully, didn't take as long because I wasn't switching to a different visa type. I was just renewing. So I do have my second spouse visa, but that was like a whole nother binder of things. My next step, hopefully, is indefinite leave to remain, which I can apply for in November 2024. The good news for that is I don't have to pay the immigration health surcharge for that because I would essentially be paying for the rest of my life at that point. The bad news is that the visa price is basically doubled and you're still basically paying the same amount. Ironically enough, the life in the UK test is actually the aspect of my citizenship journey that I am most confident in because I've taken all of the practice tests. I have taken it upon myself to immerse myself in the culture, despite what my accent may tell you. All of this going back to Meghan is like, we are doing our best to prove that we deserve to be here and that we respect this culture. Nobody seems to understand the amount of physical and emotional labor that goes into that, and that we want to be here this badly that we are willing to go through all of the things, everything that life, that the government throws at us in order to be here. I can't go back and live in the United States. I've stated my reasons why in my previous video, but to reiterate, I can't afford to pay health insurance. I don't want to live with the anxiety that I could be shot on whatever street corner. Freaking Roe v. Wade decision, and thankfully lots of states have put these into law, including Michigan, thank you. But like, I can't live there. I can't. I really can't. I just, as much as I complain about things about this country, I really do love it and I want to be here. And I have built great, relationships with the people that I work with, but I'm still quite lonely over here. And especially, if people judge you before they even know you. Like, I'm a normal person and people do that. Imagine like what Meghan has had to go through with the sheer, just awful everything that the royals, the press, just recently Jeremy Clarkson just wrote that he would love for people to like throw shit at this woman. Imagine. So thankfully I have a therapist who is also an immigrant, so I don't have to explain all of this. They know. Where to end this? I suppose where I will leave this is that Meghan is correct, at least about the experience of being an immigrant in this country. You can't win. You really can't win. Anyways, I need to find a way to make these videos shorter than 20 minutes, but oh well, I've needed to talk about this for a minute, and I just finished the docuseries and it's fresh in my brain. So if you've made it all the way to the end, God bless you. Thank you. If you liked this video and you want to see some more of my content, I already posted a video of my 2022 reading review with my Storygraph stats. I had a lot of fun doing that and finding out a bit more about my reading habits for the year. This was, of course, before Storygraph put out their own Wrapped. I won't be filming an addendum, but I think next year I will wait until my Storygraph Wrapped stats actually come out. Hopefully I'll be able to do a Spotify Wrapped video. And as always, keep up with that Eurovision site. We've got lots more content coming. In fact, I'm gonna go work on some of that later today. Thanks for sticking around. Please be nice and constructive in the comments. I don't need any of the vitriol from my previous video on this subject. Follow me on Twitter at HelenMarie95, Tumblr HelenMarie95. I'm way more active on there now. Instagram HelenMarie_95. I'll also put links to my Storygraph and my Letterboxd account in the description. I did review Harry and Meghan docuseries on Letterboxd, so you can go check that out and also see what else I'm watching. And yeah. Thanks so much, and I will see you in the next one, and remember to keep living awesome lives. Bye.